Schefter, who has had this story all the way back from the very beginning on the day of the NFL draft, where this journey sort of began, and we'll see where it leads us to a week from today. Schefty, what should the fans know? What's the very latest on Rodgers a week from the start of camp?
Greeny, I continue to believe that his arrival in Green Bay might just be contingent upon his departure from Green Bay. And it's a situation where the Packers have had extensive talks with Aaron Rodgers this offseason. They've offered him a contract extension. They've offered to make him the highest paid quarterback and player in football. He has not taken those things. And so the Packers report to training camp a week from today. And again, I believe that if they somehow find a way to compromise and take off time on Aaron Rodgers' deal, that perhaps that could be enough to lure him in. But it's hard for me to imagine and conceive him just showing up with the 3 years he has remaining on his deal when he has not taken any of the extensions that the Packers have offered throughout this offseason.
Right. And so you continue to say that the likeliest scenario here is some sort of adjustment to the contract that shortens it and perhaps gives him the ability to become a free agent after next season. You were the first one to put this thought in my head last week, Schefty. So let me bring in Mike T and Jeff. Yeah. And Adam, I'll come right back to you. But this sort of came up on the show yesterday. And Mike T, I'll throw it to you. That would scare me to death if I'm the Packers, because if you allow him to become a free agent next year, you lose two things that you currently have. One is the asset that he is. You wind up losing him for nothing at some point. Schefty's already shaking his head, but let me just get through it. You tell me if I'm missing something. You run the risk of losing whatever it is you might get in return from him, a treasure trove of draft picks, etc. The other is you lose the ability to control where he goes next. So it's one thing if he winds up in Denver. It's another thing entirely if he can choose wherever he wants to go and he winds up in a place where he can come back and beat you on a regular basis. Schefty, let me just, am I missing something in that?
Well, yeah. Again, there are various ways to do it. I don't know if they're going to allow him to become a free agent, but what they could do, for instance, and I've floated this idea before, is put a inflated roster bonus payment due on, say, the second day of the league year so that the Packers would have to trade him by then. That means that would lock in a trade possibility. It's hard for me to imagine that they'll just let him walk after a year, right? You could trade him now. You could trade him after the season. I think the bottom line to this whole thing, Greeny, is it certainly looks like if Aaron Rodgers plays this season, and that's still to be determined, this would be his final season in Green Bay if he plays this season. Now, the question is how they engineer his departure.
Okay, Mike T, that all of a sudden makes a lot more sense to me. Is you put something in place, and let me hear from you, Mike, again, as the general manager in two different places during your NFL career. You put something in place that assures him you will trade him by next year, and thus you do preserve the two things I was concerned about.
Right, or the other way to do it very simply would be to shorten the contract, make this the last year of the contract. At the end of the year, they can franchise him, and then, as you mentioned, Greeny, then they could sign and trade him and get the requisite compensation that they're looking for. And what's interesting, going back about a decade when we were in a similar situation, when we were at the Jets and the Packers were then trading, ironically, Brett Favre to get Aaron Rodgers on the field, they were bound and determined to make sure that he was going to be traded to an AFC team, not an NFC team. And that's why ultimately we were able to get him at the Jets, and Brett Favre didn't go to a team like Tampa Bay where he knew John Gruden. So control, if you're the Packers, is consequential, as you mentioned, one, for the compensation, but also they want to make sure that he's going to be in the AFC, not the NFC. So either a roster bonus concept or shortening the contract with the ability to franchise him at the end of the season are ways to accomplish that.
Okay, so all of that makes a lot of sense to me. Jeff Saturday, let me come to you from a player's perspective. A week away from the start of camp and all of this stuff sort of hovering above it. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think Aaron cares how he gets out. I think he just wants to get out. So if it's one of those things that Mike T just talked about, right? Shorten my contract. This year's the last portion on it. We can negotiate all the details of what type of team you want me to go to, where you want, how you want to control it. We can talk of all those things as long as this is the last season I'm in Green Bay. And listen, I've said this before. Aaron Rodgers is going to play this year. He's going to play for the Packers. We don't know when, but he's not going to sit out all 17 games. He's going to come back in, do whatever he has to do. Now, I'm not sure how that works in Green Bay's organization, but at the end of the day, it gives both of these, the organization and Aaron, the best chance of winning a Super Bowl. So I think he's smart enough enough to understand that part. I think he just wants his time in Green Bay to be done at the end of this season, irrespective of how we get it done. Just make sure at the end of this year I'm walking out that door.
Schefter, 30 seconds. Give me a final word.
Listen, a lot is going to be determined here in the next week, and until they get that resolved, I don't think we see Aaron Rodgers in training camp. There are still discussions that have been had. They're going to be ongoing, and we'll see how they figure it out.
Okay, so we're a week away from starting to get some of these answers. Mike T, I'll come back to you. I promise we'll get to this, but I have to get to the main event. Did you see Showtime last night? Shohei Ohtani on the mound and at the plate. Angels facing the A's. What an interesting game this was. Ohtani off to a very strong start. Bottom of the second with a runner on. Matt Chapman with a 96-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle goes down. And then Ramon Laureano chasing a filthy slider. 3 strikeouts through 2 for Ohtani. Third inning now. Ohtani looking to give himself